All right. I'm not sure what happened. The first part of the recording might not have worked, and I don't know why, but it should have. Now, what I want to show you quickly, because we don't have much to do. All right. But what I want to show you in here is if we bring the program up and we run it, okay. I'm going to keep talking, even though you may or may not be able to hear this. We've done animation. We've done, okay. We've got sound. We've animated this. If we run it again, okay, we've got that. So we animated losing. We even animated the paddle. So really the only thing that's in here that we have not done anything with is the ball. And we don't have to if we don't want to, but we're going to not animate the ball, but we're going to put some special effects. But to do that, we're going to create a new sprite. So I want you to go down here and choose a sprite. And this time we don't want, we could use the tennis ball again, but that or something else, but it might look confusing. So I'm going to use the ball. All right. Now look at the size. That's too big. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to shrink the size of the ball down, and I'm going to try it. I just want to see what it looks like at 25%. That's a little too small, I think. Well, maybe we can start it. I'll start it at 45. So it's didn't like that. Oh, that was the movement. Sorry. Let's try it here. 45. It's almost the same size. I'm going to even try it at 50 and just see if that works. So they don't look like they're the same size, but I think this will work just fine. Now, we've got to put in a total of about 10 lines of code, maybe 10 to 12 lines, and then we can check to see whether or not this works. So if you haven't done so, add a new sprite. It's a ball sprite. I did put some animation on here. I didn't put any sound for the ball. I didn't know if that made sense, as the ball had a shadow effect for it to have sound. You could, of course, if you wanted to, add some sound. All right. So I need as we typically do, I need a when clicked, and we're going to put in here about 5 or 6 lines. The first one's a new one that we haven't looked at before. And we're basically going to be choosing here, and it's in here somewhere. There's a go with layers. And we're basically kind of telling it to move up and down, for lack of better words. But we don't want it to go forward. We want it to go backward. And we're just going to send it kind of into oblivion by saying go backward 99 layers. And then once you've done that, we're going to tell it to hide. And it will make more sense when you see it than to tell you about it. All right. Now we want a forever loop. And in this forever loop, we're going to put in 3 lines, and then we're done with this part of this code block here. So we're going to tell it here, we want it to do a go to, but where we want it to go to is the tennis ball, because that's what it should be following. And after we do that, we want it to create a clone of itself. And that's going to give it the shadow looking effect. All right. And then we want it to wait for 1/10 of a second. And then it's going to create another clone of itself, and it's going to create another clone of itself, etc. All right. So we've got a when clicked. I think I've got all the code in here. Go backward 99 layers, hide, forever, and then in the forever, go to tennis ball, create a clone of myself, and wait for 1/10 of a second. All right. We've got to add one more when statement that's going to have about 4 lines of code or 5 lines of code in it, and then we're finished with this. Has everybody had a chance? Is there anybody still putting this code in? Anybody? Okay. You are there, correct? You're all out there?
Yes.
Okay. Yes. All right. So the last thing we have to put in here, I'm going to move this down, is the when I start as clone. All right, so when I start as a clone, first thing I want to do is I want to show myself. Okay, then we're going to put in a repeat loop, and we're going to repeat 20 times. 2 more lines and we're done. We're going to go over to the purple, and we're going to tell it to change its size by -4, because that's going to make it get smaller. So each clone should be 4 pixels smaller than the previous one. And then under the purple, we're going to change its ghost effect by 5. And when we're all done, I thought I kept that, but maybe I didn't. Well, maybe we didn't have it to begin with. When we're all done, we want to delete the clone. So we put in this one, and you all said you had this. And then we've got this one right here. So I'll leave that up for about a minute. And now I'm going to save, and I'm going to run it again. And I want to see this time when I run it, I want to see if the ball has got that effect. So didn't give it much of a chance, because I got to change my thing back to on my win. So that's the you win. Come on. I want to change that you win back to 28. And I won't win, because I don't think I ever have. But when I run this again, you should see the ball really animating now. Okay. So that right there is the end of the program. All right. So I think, at least, double check. Yep. I've already made it shareable. So mine is out here ending with 88. So if for some reason, if for any reason you fell behind, all right, let me change my share here. There it is. All right. Now I've got every single thing that we've done thus far. And that last one is down here. Okay. And I'll leave that there for just a second. Now, I'm going to look after I get done with this, but it appears as though I had problems recording the first one of these. So this is what I am going to do, just in case anybody wants to watch this, but missed previously. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back, and the first part of this that we already did, as we did together, I'm going to re-record that. So you might want to turn your sound off if you don't want to hear it again. But please look on the screen, please, everybody. And you'll notice that if you go out to the chat, I have put out there on the chat a thing called mathtutor.pdf. And if you open it, this is it here. So you should all have your own copy. And what I'll do is I'll try to see if I can leave that up a little bit later. But this is something for you to work on. I'm going to give you from now until 1 o'clock to work on it. If you don't finish it, it's not a big thing. It really isn't. But I'm giving you requirements here, and I'm asking you to do it yourself. So it says create your own Scratch math tutor game. For this game, create your own UI. You can make it whatever you want it to be. Now, I'd like you to try to start putting in multiple blocks. Why? Because that makes your code known as being more modular. All right. And if you say, I don't know what you mean, well, imagine that, and I realize you're all too young for this, but let's imagine that your parents left for the day and they told you they wanted you to basically do a bunch of work around the house. Okay. And so the first thing they wanted you to do was to do the laundry. So there would be a bunch of stuff that you would do regarding do the laundry. You'd go into the laundry room, you might have to go and get all the dirty clothes, etc. And you might have to sort the laundry and then decide if it's hot, cold, etc. But you get the idea. So let's say you did all that. And that was number one on your list. Then number two, they asked you to clean your bedroom. So you'd go into your bedroom, you'd make your bed, you pick up anything that was dirty on the floor and you'd put it again in a hamper or whatever. You'd pick up your toys or your computer, whatever you had out there, etc. But the idea behind this is you're taking each job that you're supposed to be doing and you're compartmentalizing it by putting into its own block. All right. So I want you to use multiple blocks. I only have one sprite in mind, but you can use more sprites if you want to. I kept mine simple. All right. What this should do, and it should run, and at the end of the run, it should ask the user if they want to run again, the program again. But what it should do is it should prepare 10 different math questions. And when it does, it should first generate a random number. So that there should be a loop. And inside of that loop, you should first generate a random number. If it's a 1, it's going to be an addition. If it's a 2, it'll be a subtraction. If it's a 3, it'll be a multiplication. And if it's a 4, it'll be a division. I don't want you to have to worry about decimals. So you might want to watch this. It's about 10 minutes long. It's a much better explanation than I could give you. So now you've got a plus or a minus or a multiply or a divide. So then I want you each of these 10 times to generate 2 random numbers between 1 and 10. And then ask the user, you'll say something like, what's the answer of 7 times 6? All right. And then they will put in 42, hopefully. And if they do, you'll add 1 to your number of correct answers. And if they say 12, then you'll add 1 to your number of incorrect answers. Then when you get through all 10 questions, all right, you will rank the user as being proficient or not being proficient. If they get a 9 out of 10 or 10 out of 10, they're excellent. If they get 7 out of 10 or 8 out of 10, they're good. If they get 5 out of 10 or 6 out of 10, they're fair. And if they get less than 5 out of 10, they've done poor. So when you've done all that, then you will print out the number of correct answers they had, the number of incorrect answers they had, and what their ranking was. Now you can add any more stuff in here that you want for inputs, outputs, if you want to ask them their name or whatever. I didn't think that was necessary, but you might like to do that. Go ahead and do it. If you want to make it harder, then rather than generating numbers between 1 and 10, make them numbers between 1 and 100. Because it'll be a lot harder to do a problem like 77 times 35 as opposed to 7 times 5, for example. And again, allow the user to run the program again and again if they so desire. All right. Then after, add whatever, any additional stuff that you want. I'm going to give you the rest of the morning to work on this. So really till 1 o'clock. Then at 1 o'clock, you will have another thing in the chat where I will put a link in there to the one that I did. And then I will go over each and every part of what I did at that time. And as it says, try to have fun with it. If there's something you don't know how to do or you can't do it correctly, just don't do it. Work on what you're comfortable doing. You're not being graded. You're not turning it in, so there's no pressure. So my question to you is, do you all understand what I'm asking you to do? Can I get a yes?
Yes.
Is there anybody who does not understand what I'm asking you to do? So again, you've got now from about 10:15 until 1 o'clock. I mean, you don't have to work through your lunch hour. And if you don't get it done, it's not a big thing. All right. And I'm working on one more of these. I'm going to give you another one to work on, and I'm going to give you all morning tomorrow to work on it. Now that one I haven't finished, but I'll make sure by the time that tomorrow morning rolls around, I have finished. And I'm going to give you tomorrow morning to work on that. And then at 1 o'clock, I'm going to go over what I did, and I'll post the link to mine. And that'll be it for the class. The last two things I want to mention until we start up again at 1 o'clock, the last two things I want to mention are, number one, thank you to those of you who sent me a picture. I appreciate it. If you want to send me a picture, you basically have until probably Monday, because I would think on Monday, I'm probably going to create that website. And I'll send a link out to each and every one of you who's on my email list, so you can see what's there. And if your picture's there, you'll have your picture. And if it's not, it'll just have your first name. Okay. And even the people with the pictures that won't have their last name, we don't do that. Also, again, you either this morning got the fillable PDF, which has got the form in there for the evaluation. You either got it already, or you're going to get it this afternoon, or you're going to get it tomorrow. And Ms. Bragg again asked me to please remind you all to please, work on it, get it done, etc., and turn it back in, because it really helps her in the way she runs this program. So unless anyone has any questions, I'm going to stop until 1 o'clock. But what I am going to do is I'm going to go back and I'm going to bring up my program. And in my program, I'm going to go back because, like I said, I had problems, I guess, when I initially did this. All right. I had problems. So I'm going to retape that stuff. But what I'm going to do is that the code's already in there, so I'm not going to pull it out, but I'm just going to go over what I did in each one of these things. So I'm going to start like I did with you this morning with the paddle. All right. And then go on from there. So like I said, you said there are no questions. So if you don't want to hear me, you'd probably want to mute right now or turn your sound way down. But please come back in again at 1 o'clock and we'll go over what I did for this. All right. And at that time, if you want to make yours shareable so everybody else can see it, you can do that. And if you don't have to. All right. So again, I'll see you at 1 o'clock. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a new share. I'm going to go back to my brick breaker and I'm going to start talking about it all over again. All right. You all said that there were no questions. So like I said, I'm just going to continue on. All right. So again, this morning, it appears as though I had...
thing, right? That's the thing I was doing until 1.
What's that?
So we're going to do the math tutor until the original lunchtime by ourselves?
Yes.
Okay.
So you start up a new project that's called Math Tutor.
Okay.
Okay.
Just Math Tutor?
Whatever you want to call it. I called mine Math Tutor or Math Game or something like that. Okay.
Okay, now I'll do something similar.
All right.
But so making some type of Math Tutor, right?
Yeah, it can be as simple or as complex as you want. I think you're going to be surprised when you see mine, how simple mine looks.
Wait, what do you mean by Math Tutor?
Can I
It's
make one
code?
that
Hold on, one at a time. The question was, what do I mean by a math tutor? And in fact, I wasn't going to do this, but I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll see if I've got mine. So hold on a second. I didn't really want to show mine because I don't want people to think, oh, I got to do it like that. No, not at all. So where is it? I call mine Math Tester. So when you run it, when I run mine, it looks like this. Whoops, let me get it bigger. So answer, like 9 by 9. Well, that's 1, right? So I put in a 1 here, click enter, and it says you are correct. Then it comes up with another 1. Answer 9 times 8, 72. You are correct. And it does that, basically it does that It does that 10 times and it keeps track. Does it make sense what I'm asking you all to do? Is there anyone who's still, is there anyone who's still confused? All right, so I'm gonna go back and retape right now. So if you don't want to hear me, like I said, then mute me, or turn the sound way down on your computer or whatever. All right, so I'm going to start back up at the paddle. All right, this is the code that we had originally at the paddle when clicked, and none of it's been changed. This is the code we had originally when you received the bounce. This has changed. How did it change? All right, I added here that when we are within basically 60 pixels of the ball, all right, to the paddle, I want to play this sound. I went into sounds and I added this ping pong. All right, so I added that sound and then I put this if block in here. And it said, so this is new. When I receive the bounce, I check to see where I am. All right, and if I'm within 60 pixels, I play the sound because I'm about to hit it, and I change the color of the paddle. And that's all we did in here. So I'll leave that up for a second so that if anybody wants to copy that or whatever, they'll be able to do so. All right. And the other things that I did here for the paddle were these two things. When you receive a game over message, I'm telling you to stop any other sprites that are running. I don't want the paddle to keep moving after the game's over, or the ball to keep moving, or whatever. I don't want any of that stuff to happen. So if I receive a show game over message, stop any other sprites that are running. Also, if I tell it to stop the game, do the same thing and stop any sprites that are running. So I'm going to make this a little smaller. This is the new code. This code was in here before, but this is the new code that's right here. I'm going to leave that up there literally for about a minute so that if anybody needs to see that, they will be able to do so. All right, so that was it for the paddle. And what you'll see, and I'm just going to quickly run it, if you just look at the paddle now, notice when I hit, when the ball, the paddle color is changing every time, and you could hear that ping pong like sound. So that's what we put in so far, and that's the code here. Then we went to the tennis ball itself. The tennis ball itself. This, when clicked, I believe nothing changed here. To my knowledge, nothing changed. When clicked, forever. Show game over, because this means that the ball is went underneath where the paddle couldn't get to it anymore, so the game's over. This one, again, we've also not touched. All right. Now with this one, with the when clicked, I don't think anything changed except yesterday when mine wasn't working yesterday, I had forgotten to put in this line of code. I had forgotten to put in that after the go to, before the wait for 3 seconds, I'd forgotten to put in this code. So it is now in there. So in other words, we're not animating the ball at all. But what we will do is when we provide this other sprite for the, we're not, animating this ball, we'll bring in another ball that will give it that look again of having a shadowed type of look. So I believe there was nothing else changed in here. Again, I'm going to leave that up there just for a minute. We did add this. When I receive stop game, stop other scripts and sprite. So I'm going to leave this up there until the clock goes from 10:27 to 10:28. Well, to 10:29 because it just changed. All right, it's 10:29. So now I'm going to move down and show the other. See if I make it that, no, it's too small. So I'll leave this one up for a minute. Make sure you've got this, and then I'll bring that one up, and then that'll be it for this. So this is the when I receive bounce. And you can also double check and make sure you've got the right code for the when clicked all the way up to that wait. All right, so again, for the paddle, we changed the color. So every time the paddle hits the ball, the color of the paddle will change. And we also added a sound to the paddle, that ping pong like sound. We're doing nothing, I believe, to the tennis ball. So I'd already shown you this up here. And I'm all the way to here. So I'm going to go under the weight, just show you the forever. Okay, so that's the whole thing for that. In fact, I can make it so you can basically see. There we go. So again, all that is it's a when clicked, position itself, point in the direction we want, wait for 3 seconds, and start the game. Anytime we touch the paddle, we want to broadcast bounce so that we can handle it. I'll leave that up there for again for about a minute or so. All right, so the next thing that was in here was the brick, and that's kind of what we did the most work on. All right. So I believe we had this yesterday when I started as clone, but there were things that were added to it at that time. So I want to mention what those are. Okay, so you'll notice when I start as clone, we've got a set there. It says set goes to factor 100, change by -10, and then we've got this repeat. All right, what that's going to allow that to happen is for those bricks to kind of fade into view, as opposed to the way they were set up before. So what you'll see when we run this, you can see how they're fading into view and kind of moving up like that. All right, so watch there. All right, so that was what that part was doing right there. All right, and in here, we're changing the ghost effect, etc., to make it look a little nicer. All right, then we also made a change. In fact, let me leave that up there for a minute. So I'll up through the forever loop. So we added that repeat until, and we added that set, that change. So I'll leave that up there till about 10:34, and then we'll continue on. Okay, I'm going to go down to the forever loop then. And what we did in here, let's just go and show this much. We said if the tennis ball is hitting the brick, of course, we've just removed, we just hit a brick, so we want to change our score by 1. That was the same. But I added 2 sounds in here. They were laser 1, that sounds like this, and laser 2, that sounds like this. And what we did was every time we hit, we're either going to play one of those sounds or the other. And to do that, I added an if statement. And that if says pick a random number from 1 to 2. So it's either going to pick a 1 or it's going to pick a 2. If it picks 1, play the laser 1 sound. If it picks a 2, play the laser 2 sound. So I'll leave that up there for a minute. And then finally in here, in this thing, I added this repeat loop. And again, this is a ghost thing. So now what this is going to do, right before we delete the brick, we're going to make it look smaller. It's going to be shrinking, for lack of better words. And then we're going to delete it so it's physically gone. And I think that's everything we did. So I'm going to leave that repeat up there for a minute or so. And then we will go on to the bricks. Yes, we're at the bricks. So I've shown you all the changes for the bricks then as well. So let's jump over to the game over. And this, we went back in and we animated it. So in other words, it wasn't doing much to begin with, but now notice that when you do the game over, what happens? So I start the game, I'll let it loose. So we're flashing the color, and it's kind of going from a red that we had to kind of a more ghosty type of effect. You can see that. All right, but it's flashing on and off rather. And then in just a minute, when we get to the other one, I'm not sure what's the problem. There must be some kind of weird glitch. But now when I win, well, unfortunately, I got it set up so I got to get 8, and that ain't going to happen. See that? But if I set it back, and I'll do that in just a minute when we get to the you win, I'll set that back again to 1. We did the same kind of animation in there. All right. So again, to show you what I did, one of the first things I did was I found the space ripple sound, and that's it there. And when I press on it, so you saw that. And again, you'd be welcome, of course, to put in any sound you wanted. You don't have to put in a sound, but this is making it more, for lack of better words, this is not an arcade quality game, and you know that, but it's more that type, with the sound and the animation, etc., that you'd find in something like that. So we added this stuff in here. So when we receive the game over, we added this. Start the space ripple sound. Show the game over. Previously, I think it just had the show. We're broadcasting a stop game. Then we are repeating for 15 seconds. This is making the color flash. Red to basically no color almost. And just every second, it's just flashing in there. So let me leave that up for a couple minutes. So that, again, if anybody wants to grab that code that doesn't have it, they'll be able to do so. And that's all of it, except there's a stop all at the bottom. So if I make this a little smaller, again, we had our when clicked hide, and now we've got this. All right, so that is all the code for there, and I'll leave that up there for about another minute. So again, when the game starts, hide the sorry game over. And when the game's over, make the sound, show the sorry game over, broadcast stop game. So any sprite that's running will stop running. And then we'd repeat in here 15 times that color effect where it goes from red to kind of a whatever color that was. All right. Now, for some reason, when we first start up the game, it's got that up there. So when we start, shouldn't be doing that. But that's something I've got to fix. All right. So now it's okay. But again, there it goes. Now, what you'll find in just a second is in a minute or so, when I put up the code for the UN, it's virtually the same code as far as what's going on in here, because we wanted it to flash the same way. Now, I guess what I could have done, if I'm pretty sure it is the exact same code here, these 1, 2, 3, 4 lines, I could have made a block, and I could have made it a global block and then called it from both places. We could have done that as well. All right. but it's only 4 lines of code. If it would start getting more and more when we'd have more and more code, then probably that's something I would want to look at doing. All right. So then again, let's put up the code for the UN, and I'm going to make it smaller. I think that, yeah, that's all of it. And we'll take it from the top. Again, you've already seen this. None of this that's in here is new. None of the stuff that's in here. Set score to 0, hide. Again, we'll move this back. Let's make it a little harder. I'll make it, well, a little easier rather. I'll make it 3. So now notice that when I run this, if I get 3, it'll win. I won. Same kind of stuff as far as the same kind of animation. All right. So the same stuff that you basically just saw. So what's new in here, again, I'd want to move that back to 28, but what's new in here is from here on. So the broadcast stop game. And then I went in and grabbed yet another sound, and I grabbed that gold cheer right here. Just so when to kind of commemorate the person winning, to make it sound a little neater. So after we broadcast the stop game, we just one time, okay, start this sound like this. All right. And we repeat this for 15 seconds. Right. Now that I think of it, there were probably a couple of other things that I could have done in here that I didn't do. And I went over the ball already, so I probably don't have to repeat this because that's when I started this part of the tape. But a couple of things that I could have done to probably make the game, for lack of better words, a little more challenging. And that is, let me go back to here. I really could have put a backdrop in here, and on mine I did. I put a backdrop in, and I put in the one down here. It's down quite a ways. It's called Rays. Kind of like that, because it made it, again, just gave it a more splashy looking effect. All right. And the other one that I could have done is I could have come in here, and let's go back to the you win, because that's where the game runs. All right. And let's see, let's go look for another sound, and let's look for something, I don't know. So I'm going to go into here to sounds, and to search, I don't think there's anything in there that I would want to use. Wacky sounds? No. None of those. Space sounds, we could have done one of these. So let's see what's in here. I don't like that one. Maybe you don't. But I kind of like this space one here. I'm going to click there, and I think that'll add it. Nope, it did not. Try it again. So a space, and it was this one here. There we go. So that's it. Now, what I'm about to do, this is for the rest of the class too. This may sound whatever. It's either going to be really cool or not. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to say in the UN here, go back to the code. So when the program starts, after you've shown it, you wait 3 seconds and you show it. All right. So let's see. When clicked, wait until this, wait until score equal 3. So I want to do something when the game starts. So let's see. When clicked, set score to 0. Not sure when I want to do this. I probably have to add a new sprite to do this. Let me look in here. I'm going to just try this. When the program begins, I'm going to go over to sounds and I'm going to tell it to forever. Like I said, this may end up sounding really weird. If it does, I'll just get rid of it. But I'm going to come in here with a forever block. And under sounds, I'm going to say, play sound, space adventure until done. Right? Now, you hear it just keeps playing and playing. But one thing I want to make sure that I do then is when we're at the game, when we're at game over and we're done with all this stuff. Okay. And I've done the space ripple and I've done that. When I do the stop all, I think right before I do that, I'm going to do a stop all sounds just to make sure. All right. And I'll do the same thing in the you win. So I will do a stop all sounds in here as well. So let's do a file save now, and I'm going to run it and let's see the difference. Okay, here we go. And it stopped. That's what I wanted to make sure. So okay. So we've got that. Now you may not want that extra sound to play, and I will bring this up again for the class. All right, after lunch, but that's what I've done. So that's the program. There's only one more thing. There are two more things I wanted to say, and one of them I already mentioned. So there was a line missing yesterday in the maze 2-player game that we did, and that was the 1-player game, I should say. Whatever we were working on yesterday that didn't work. I guess it was the brick breaker 1-player game. So mine didn't work. It does now. So everything that I have out there does work. All right. And the other thing that I mentioned this morning, I just want people to see this in case you came in late and didn't see it. And that is, let's see, I'm going to come in here and do a start. I'm going to start scratch. And I'm going to bring up my, I think it was the single player maze game. I had been asked yesterday about a timer. So the game now has a timer. All right. And let's just put in all the code here. Boom, boom, boom. And I'll make these way down here so you can see all of them. So what I did was I added a variable that I named timer. So if I look under variables, there's now a variable called timer, and I'm showing it. Not a great place to really put this because, again, I wouldn't want to put it in the middle, but I can't move it off either. See that? So I can either move, I started with it down there. I moved it up here so people could see it. All right. And what I added here was when you start the game, call init and start timer, which is a brand new block that I put in. So let's look at that block next. All right, probably should have looked at that one first, but it's fine. So this init and start timer, set the timer equal to 0, and then forever said, wait a second, and then up it by 1. So when the game starts, you're going to see that in just a minute, that just keeps going and going and going. All right. And the last thing was for when I changed maze. So I wanted to restart the timer. Now we wouldn't have to do that. If you didn't do that and you went from maze 1 to maze 2, the timer would keep going. Now it would take some work. So what I could do is every 60 seconds, for example, we could have formatted the timer and checked it out. So every time that, the number is evenly divisible by 60, we could have added 1 to minutes and then put a colon in there and then added the second. So there's a lot of ways that this could still be improved. But what you see on this one now is, notice here now when I start to run it, it goes to 0, but now it's actually a really functional timer. All right. So as I've mentioned before, I'm going to say this one last time. Let me stop the run here because there's no sense in keeping it going. And let me change my share. I think that's the one there. All right. So, I mean, you should all be proud of yourselves. And I'm not just saying that. We did a rainbow art the first day and a coin flip the first day. Then we started talking guessing game, which we finished the second day. And we did the magic 8-ball the second day. We also started on the maze game on the second day. And then we went into the maze game on the third day, to the single player and the multiplayer. Actually, this was in the second day. We got into the multiplayer. Then in the third day, yesterday, we finished the multiplayer and we did the brick breaker game, version 1, which was just for one user. I can now come in here because this one is complete. All right. And then after lunch, we're going to work on this math tutor. Go over that in just a second. Mine is complete. And again, I'm going to share mine with everybody. No reason not to. And that'll be right there. So we'll have done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 total programs already. All right. So after lunch, I will go over this math tutor game. And this math tutor game is already mentioned. Looks like this. Create your own Scratch math tutor game. Create your own user interface. Make it as simple or as complex as you want. But I asked people to use different blocks of code. In other words, to modularize the program. Have one or more sprites. I don't think you can have a Scratch program without a sprite. I could be wrong. All right, but I think you need some kind of a sprite. All right. Ask 10 questions, math questions. And when you do that, for each question, as it says right there, for each question, all right, what I want you to do for each question is I want you to generate a number, a 1, 2, 3, or 4. If you generate a 1, then what we want to have happen, whoops, if we generate a 1, let me get back to that again. If we generate a 1, we're going to be doing an addition problem. If we generate a 2, we're going to be doing a subtraction problem. If we generate a 3, we're going to be doing a multiplication problem. And if we do a 4, we're going to be doing a division problem. The problem with division is if you, let's say we say 39 divided by 26. Okay. And that's not a bad one because the answer is actually, I think, 1.5. But what about 39 divided by 27, which might be something like 1.37864 or whatever? I mean, the chance of everybody getting that right and you giving the answer, etc., is not good. So if you go and onto YouTube, I found this video. All right. And it is, it's not even as long as I thought it was. It's 3 minutes long. I just looked at the code that they had in there and I kind of pulled it out. And when they used dividend, that was my number 1. When they used divisor, that was my number 2. And when they used the actual answer, which is quotient, I call that mine, for me, actual answer. And I made a variable called remainder, and that became my remainder. And then I just used their stuff. So again, wherever they use dividend, mine was number 1. Wherever they use divisor, mine was number 2. Wherever they use quotient, mine was actual answer. All right. So you, again, you will come in and generate after you've generated a 1, 2, 3, or 4, 1 meaning addition, to add, 2 meaning subtract, 3 meaning multiply, 4 meaning divide. So after you've done that, and you've selected those, I also set a simple variable that I called operator to one of these 4 values. You'll see why when we go over it in class. Then I generated 2 random numbers between 1 and 10. We could have made this something like 100 or whatever to make it a little harder, but that's fine. Kept track of the number of correct answers and the number of incorrect answers for each game. And then I ranked. If you got 9 out of 10 or 10 out of 10, you were excellent. If you got 7 out of 10 or 8 out of 10, you were good. If you got 5 out of 10 or 6 out of 10, you were fair. Less than 5 out of 10, you pretty much did a poor job. And then at the end of the program, I printed out the number of correct answers, the number of incorrect answers, and the ranking. And I told students to be, all of you to add anything else you felt was worth adding and put it into a loop so that it could run over and over again if desired. And as it says, feel free to add any extra stuff. Now, if any of you are still listening to this, that's totally fine. It is 10:58, so I would have given you a break already, but I'm going to take a break and I'm going to come back at 11:10. And when I come back, I'm just going to have a screen up. And if any of you have run into any questions, feel free to ask them to me at that time. But I'm going to pause the record. All right, everybody, it is 1 o'clock, so I'm going to start back up, and I want to show you one thing before I show you my program. Going back to the Brick Breaker version 2 that we did, I didn't have a background on it, so I put this one on. Where is it? Raise, just so it stood out a little bit. So you see it now, okay? So that's the first thing I did. And the other thing that I did, and you may like this and you may dislike it, but this is what I did. I went back to the page, the UN page, and I decided that as soon as the game started, I wanted to play a sound. So I went over and looked at sounds, and I was going to do something with like musical, but then I found this, and I kind of like this. So I put that into an infinite loop at the at the top of the game. So you'll see here, I just literally, this is the only code I added, was right here. When clicked, forever, play the sound until done. And then when it gets done, it'll play it again. So now when I run this game, okay, and you get the idea. So that's if I won, and here's if I lose. Okay. So you might think that's too much, putting all that in there. And if you do, of course, then don't have it. But I want to just do one last thing, and that is change that back to 28. I've already shared this, so that is done. So if you had a problem with yours or whatever, and you want to copy mine, not a problem. But what I want to do now, probably it'll take, I would guess, somewhere around an hour, is to go through my program and what I did. All right. Now, to make this a little bit easier, as I test this, I'm not going to ask 10 questions. I mean, I think I could do 10 questions, but I'm not going to ask them. In other words, where I'm asking my number of questions here, I've got a loop in here someplace that goes through 10 times. I'm going to just change it to 3. All right. But let me show you all of my code. So what I have done, I want everybody to hear this, okay? If you go out onto the chat, let me move this chat way up here. So I put here is the link to my Math Tutor Scratch program. So it's available now. And let me do one different share here. screen share. That if you go out here now, there's mine. So again, yours might look totally different than mine does. In fact, I hope it does. All right, that just says that you're working on something on your own. But otherwise, if you're interested in getting mine, I'm going to spend, like I said, probably about the next hour, 50 minutes, whatever, 45 minutes going over it. And then we'll talk about what we're doing tomorrow for the last day of class. And then that'll be it for the day. So this is what I did. And when you look in here, if you look under my blocks, notice how many blocks I made. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I've got one block that calculates the answer. I've got one block that calculates the ranking. I've got one block that tells whether or not the answer they put in was correct. I've got one block that displays the ranking, one block that initializes most of my variables, and one that inputs the user answer. So I'm going to blow this up a little bit so you can all see it okay. And I'm going to start going over the program right now. So hopefully anybody who's interested in this is now listening. So the first thing that I did was get rid of that. This was my sprite here. And with my sprite, he was really big. At 100%.
Excuse me?
Yes.
I can't see your screen.
Okay. I'll make sure I reshare it then. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Can you see it now?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate it. So when we clicked, like I said, originally he was 100%. And as you can see at 100%, he's pretty big. Now, maybe that would have been better. I don't know, because I could have done it like that too. I'll just leave him at 100. But when the program starts, what I did with here was just set the size to 50. Again, you can do that or not do that. Then I initialized variables. Now, I didn't initialize every variable. And I want to show you quickly, I had a lot of variables. There they are. You always get this thing called my variable. And I don't need that, so I can remove that. But I've got the actual answer. So for instance, if the problem that came up was 9 times 10, then the actual answer would be 90. My answer is whatever I guess. And I want my answer to be equal to the actual answer, but I don't know if it will be or not. If my answer is equal to the actual answer, then I want to add 1 to number correct. If my answer is not equal to the actual answer, I want to add 1 to number incorrect. Number 1 and number 2, those are just the numbers that are in there. So if I say answer 6 plus 3, 6 is number 1 and 3 is number 2. All right. The operation is a 1 if it's addition, a 2 if it's subtraction, a 3 if it's multiplication, and a 4 if it's division. That's the operation. The operator is either a plus sign or a minus sign or a multiply sign, which is an asterisk or a star, and a / for division. Play again, we all know now. All right, I think everybody's okay with that, or I hope they are. The ranking is going to be either excellent, good, fair, or poor. And the remainder has to do with when we do the division. And when we do the division, I did it as 2 steps as opposed to 1. So I've got another variable called temp. So the first thing we do is we call init variables. So let's find that particular routine. Well, that is not it. And that is not it. But it's in here. So here's my init variable. So this again is the first thing that's called. And all it's doing is it's setting that operation to a number from 1 to 4. Again, 1 to add, 2 to subtract, 3 to multiply, 4 to divide. Then it's generating a random number for me between 1 and 10, and that becomes number 1. Then it's generating another random number for me between 1 and 10, and that becomes number 2. So far, when it starts, I make my sprite 50% of its size, and I initialize the variables. Then I set play again to true. And I want to repeat it until play again becomes false. Now, when you look at this, because it may be hard to understand, and I want to make sure you can, I have 2 loops here. This loop will allow me to keep, this starts a new game. That's what this loop does. So if play again is equal to false, I want to start a new game. So when I want to start a new game, I set my number of correct ones to 0. I set my number of incorrect ones to 0. And then I repeat this 3 times. Well, I had it 10 times, but you get the idea. Initialize the variables, then call calculate the answer. Well, what's calculate the answer? Let's look at that one next. That's the problem when you start making so many of these. All right, is being able to know where all your code is. And it is here, but I might have to go look for it. All right, so here, let me move that out of the way. Here is calculate answer. And it's kind of what you probably would think it would be, in that if it's a 1, I want to set answer equal to number 1 plus number 2, and I set the symbol that I'm using to a plus sign. Otherwise, if the operator is 2, I set the actual answer to the first number minus the second number, and I set the operator equal to a minus sign. Otherwise, if it's a 3, I set the answer to the first number times the second number, and I set the operator to the asterisk. And if it's otherwise, when we get down here, it's a divide. Now, all this stuff that you see right here, I'm going to go through it right now, but all the stuff for the divide that you see down here, I took that from that link I gave you that said scratch division. So let's pretend for a second that the first number, so let's pretend that the first number that's here is 27, and the second number here is 6. They have no meaning other than those are just numbers I picked. So when you use mod, you get the remainder. So if I say, what's the remainder of 27 divided by 6? Well, the answer is 4, but the remainder is 3. Does that make sense to everyone? The remainder is 3. Do you get that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Good. So the operation is going to be this. It's going to be the dash, because the forward slash, because that's divide. If the remainder is greater than 0, it is. Remember, the remainder is 3. So I set this variable called temp equal to number 1, which was 27, minus the remainder. So 27 minus 3, which gives us 24. Then I do the math. That'll make sure that I don't have to ever worry about having any kind of remainder. So it'll be a whole number type of thing rather than having to worry about a decimal point. All right. And let's see. If the remainder wasn't greater than 0, I just do this. So I'm actually doing this twice. I probably could have rewritten that a little bit better, but what I want you to at least hopefully understand about this is kind of what you would think it would be. If it's a 1, you add them. If it's a 2, you subtract them. If it's a 3, you multiply them. And if it's a 4, you divide them. And if you understand that, I mean, then you understand the basic logic for the program. All right. So we came through there and we calculated the answer. Then we called input user answer, because I have to ask you to give your answer so we can see if your answer is the same one as the calculated one. All right. So input user answer is right here. So what are we doing? we come in and we ask, and notice there's a bunch of joins in here. So we say answer, colon, space, the first number, and then a space. All right, then the operator, so that'll say like plus, minus, etc. And then a space, and then number 2. So when we run the program, and you first come in here and you do this, where it says answer 10/8, this thing that's right here, this answer 10/8, that, whoops, sorry, that we are making with this line right here. So it's going to, ask the question, and it's going to put a little thing, the box down there like we did for the guessing game, where you put your answer. Then we're copying your answer here into my answer. All right. So what have we done so far? We have come in here and we said, set our guy to 50% of the size, do an init variables, assume they want to play again, repeat everything that's in here, everything, until they don't want to play again. So set the number correct to 0, set the number incorrect to 0, and repeat this. Initialize your variables, calculate your answer. That's the real answer. Input the user's answer. Then we've got correct or not. What does that do? It says, if my answer is equal to the calculated answer, then I want to add 1 to my number correct, and I want to say you are correct. That might have been a little long to say it for 5 whole seconds. Probably can cut that down to 3. And if they're not equal, it was incorrect. All right. So far, what I've done in here then is I've figured out the answer to the current problem. I've let the user input their answer, and now I've checked it to see whether or not it's correct. All right. And then I'm going to go back to initialize variables because I want new numbers and a new operator. So when I get done with those 3 or 10 or whatever you put there, then I calculate the ranking. And in calculate ranking, there's the display ranking. Yeah, it's kind of ugly. And I got to look for calculate ranking. Oh, we'll find it. Let's see. That's our main loop. That's our initialize variables. There's another one here that's not being shown. There they are. Okay, just trying to put everything together so we can see everything. We already did that correct or not. And here's the calculate ranking. So let me put those in. And then I'll move this down. There we go. So I just gave you some arbitrary, in other words, I just made up some stuff. So if the number correct was greater than 8, so meaning it was 9 or 10, the ranking was excellent. Otherwise, if the number was greater than 6, well, that's going to be 7 or 8, because if it was greater than 8, it would already have been hit here. So if it's 6 or 7, it'll set it to good. If it's 5 or 6, it'll set it to fair. And if you got less than 5, it'll set it to poor. All right. And then finally, we want to display all that stuff. So we display the number you got correct, correct answers, and the number you got correct, incorrect answers, and your ranking. Okay. And I think I've gone over everything that's in there, except we just asked the user then if she or he wants to play again. So let's save it and run it. Answer 10 times 3, 30. You are correct. I'm going to just do 3 of them. I'm going to do them all correct. 1 times 1, 1. You are correct. 4 plus 6, 10. You are correct. I remember I set it to only 3 of them. So now it still says my ranking is good because it's doing it based off of 10 questions. In fact, the ranking shouldn't have even been good. All right. So play again, yes or no. Let's just say yes. I'm going to get them all wrong. Answer 10 plus 5, 1. You are incorrect. 1 divided by 8, 45. You are incorrect. 4 times 1, 2. You are incorrect. So I got them all incorrect. 0, the ranking is goofed up, and it's goofed up because I'm not doing it 10 times. All right, I think that's why. But you can see that it is correctly tracking how many correct answers I had and how many incorrect answers I had. All right, and it's allowing me, if I want to do so, to play the game again. Also, you may or may not have noticed, all right, but my background or backdrop, I chose one that's called chalkboard. That was the only one I could find that kind of looked like it belonged, you know, with what we're doing. But I could have made a concert, could have done that. We could have made it anything that we wanted it to be. All right. And again, I put no sound in mine, but we could have easily come back in and added sound. I mean, it would have been nothing to do that. We could have just said when we started, I would have went over to sound, found something I was interested in, or brought my own in. Whoops, not an extension, I'm sorry. But went to sound, brought in some kind of a sound. I don't know. Let's see. Got a voice here. Party noise, scream, snoring, laugh, cheer. I don't know. There's nothing there I really like. These are notes. There's percussion. So we could have put in something. I mean, you get the idea. Could have even done the shaker again. Could have done drums. But that might have been a little bit irritating to a person who's trying to answer questions. That's what I thought. And that's why I left it off. All right. We could have put animal noises in there. Okay. Remember, we got a cow, screeched. It was kind of like the monkey, chi, etc. We could have put anything in, but I didn't put in anything. So the question got asked before lunch, so I'm going to answer it right now, even though I did answer it earlier, and that is, I got asked, can I share my game? Yes, you can, but remember, now mine right now looks like I didn't hit the share button yet. So when I go back, let me stop the run, or go to my code, and let me click share. Now it's shared. You have to share yours if you want me or anyone else to be able to see it. Because the person who asked me this morning, can I share mine? You gave me a link, a URL, but when I went and clicked on that URL, at least then, it came up and looked like this. Now, I'm not saying that you gave me a bad URL. I don't know what it is. Either you didn't share it, or whatever you copied in, you didn't copy in correctly. All right. So again, this is the link to mine. It's out there on the share. I will also include it in the emails that I send out every night. All right. If you want to give me a copy of yours, just share it. So click the share button. And then whatever the URL is up here, just email me that. All right. Just send it out to jpscott@ranken.edu. Be kind of nice if you'd put your name on there so I know whose is whose. Now, the last thing, because this is really all I have to go over for the rest of the day today. This is kind of big, but I'm going to read the whole thing to you anyway. For anyone that finishes the Math Tutor program early, I am attaching a different PDF. It's right here. We'll look at it in a minute. for the last scratch program for you to work on for this class. Tomorrow morning, we'll meet electronically for only about 10 minutes or so. Then you'll have 3 to 4 hours. You'll have all morning to work on this last program. Then at 1 p.m. tomorrow, so after lunch, you'll get a link to my shared copy of the program. And I haven't finished it yet. And we'll take a look at that after lunch. All right. And we'll look at it now too. So just so you see it. So this is the last program. If for some reason you either try it and you say, I can't do this, or it's too hard or whatever, then just don't do it. It's not really a big thing. And it's also fairly hard. Okay. Now let's take a look at the whole thing. Create a new scratch program that asks the user for the following types of inputs and produces the following types of outputs as shown in the sample run below. I actually created this in another programming language a couple of years ago. So current user, okay, there's the name, inputted current date and birthday information. So today is, and I grabbed that from the system. So it knew what today was. Birth year for the person, they put in 1956. Birth month for the person, they put in 1. Birthday for the person, they put in 24. So when this program, question?
I can't see your screen. I can't see your screen.
Okay. Can you see it now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So again, create a new scratch program, and it should first ask the user to put in their name right here. Then it should just tell them what the current date is. And then it asks them what year were they born. And then it asks them what month were they born. And then it asks them what day they were born. And then based on whatever they enter for the month, day, and year, you tell them exactly to the day how many years, months, and days old you are. For example, if let's just say that your birthday was yesterday and you are 12 years old now, it would say 12 years, 0 months, 1 day. All right. So you should be able to figure that out. I mean, there's a little bit of work involved in figuring out the calculation for doing that. All right. Then you should look up their astrological sign. And I'll show you that stuff down here in just a minute. So in this case, this person, Sandy, is an Aquarius. And then I just went out to a website and found some of the information about people who are Aquarius and some of their weaknesses, some of what they like, some of what they dislike. Then I did the same thing for the Chinese astrological thing. So she was born in the year of the monkey. Her element is metal. She partners well with people who are dragons or rats. She's quick-witted, charming, lucky, adaptable, bright, versatile, lively, and smart. So coming down here, these are what I call the requirements. I showed you a program run up above, but these are the requirements. So make sure the user puts something in that name field. They shouldn't be allowed to leave it blank. So you can check, and if it's blank, if it's not equal to anything, don't accept it. You can put them in a loop or whatever. Next, I ask for the year that they were born next. You want to make sure that year is between the current year, 2021, and 115 years ago, which would have been what, 1906, something like that? I mean, this says that we can have a person who was born, yes, anywhere from today to them being 115 years old. I don't think there's too many more people who are older than that. There may be some, but this is the way we set it up. So in other words, we can't put a date in there for the year. If they put in there 3000, you should get an error message because that year hasn't come up yet. All right. Then check to see if the year is a leap year or not. Now, I actually went out to this site in Microsoft and I grabbed this stuff. That's how you can tell if a year is a leap year. Most people think that a year is a leap year if it's divisible by 4, it's always a leap year. That's not true. If the year is divisible by 4 and it's divisible by 100, it must also be divisible by 400. And again, you might not care, but just to tell you what I mean, the year 2000, 21 years ago, that was a leap year because 2000 is divisible by 4 and 2000 is divisible by 100 and 2000 is divisible by 400. When we get to the year 2100, it will not be a leap year because even though it's divisible by 4 and it's divisible by 100, it's not divisible by 400. So it will not be a leap year. The reason that we're doing that is if the person puts in their February for their month, that means if it's a leap year, that February has 29 days. If it's not a leap year, February has only 28 days. So we want to make sure that when they enter a year, it's between the current year and 115 years previous. When they enter the month, that it's between 1 and 12. And when they enter a day, if it's either January, March, May, July, August, October, or November, if it's one of those 7 months, the day they have to enter must be between 1 and 31. If it's April, June, September, or November, if it's one of those 4 months, the number of days in a month is 1 to 30. So that's 11 of our months. And then the only wild card again is February. So if it's a leap year, they can enter a number in between 1 and 29. If it's not a leap year, they enter in a number between 1 and 28. Then, as we said, you go out and you calculate the person's age in years, months, and dates. Now, you might lose the share for a minute, but I'll get it right back if you do. So it says here, show the person's astrological information. And I've got a website here. I'm going to click allow, and I'm just going to do a new share and make sure that I do it on my screen. Can you see this with all these different circles in here?
Yes.
Okay. So before when we figured out the example one, that person was an Aquarius. So I click on here and it shows me information about Aquarius. You don't have to type this in. You should be able to go out there and copy it in. All right. So that's the first part. Close that and close that and go back. Whoops. Are you back at the program requirements here? Can you see these? Where it says, oh, that's the wrong one.
Yes.
Right here where it says, make sure the months, etc. You see that? Good.
Yeah.
So that is a place you can go to for astrological information. You don't want to go there, just put astrology into Google and you can go anywhere you want. The Chinese New Year information, this is going to get us to yet another site. Can you see a thing up here now on your screen that says Chinese Zodiac?
Yes.
All right. So that's what these are. So if the example I gave you, that person was born in 1956, which makes them the year of the monkey. So I go up the monkey here, and monkey, there's information about them. All right. And then finally, you may want to use what are called lists for this. Now they're given other names in other programming languages. That's actually pretty hard. So I referenced both a video here, and it's only 7 minutes, 54 seconds long. So it won't take you that long to watch it if you want to. And if you don't watch it. And we've got this site too. And this site brings us to Scratch Wiki. and it's all about using lists. Can you do this program without creating lists if you don't want to learn about them? The answer is yes, but you're going to have more typing and stuff to do if you do it that way. All right. Allow the user to run the program again and again if desired. This is a hard program. Do what you want to do or can do on Friday morning. All right. You get the rest of this afternoon off. You can either start the program now and continue on it Friday morning, or just you're going to be able to stop for today and then tomorrow morning work on it. As it says, on Friday afternoon, I will give you my version. I'm still working on it. All right. And to be honest with you, I just want to show you this. Let's see. Can you see on your screen right now? Can you see the Google Play Store right here?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to try this. Let's see if I still remember it. No, that wasn't it. All right, I'm going to try it like this. Well, it's not showing it. I'm not sure where it is right now. But this is a scaled down version of something that I actually taught to my students, where we created our own Android app out of it. And I put my copy of the Android app actually out on the Google Play Store. So it was out there. I don't know why it's not finding it, but it's not. All right. So again, I'm still working on my version. I have enjoyed teaching the class. Hopefully you have. If you start on this and you're like, this is just way too hard. All right. And if it turns out that not all of you are back for tomorrow because either you didn't want to do this or you've had enough or whatever, I understand. It's been kind of a long week, but I hope you enjoyed the class. I hope you learned something and got something out of it. Okay. I don't know if any of you in here right now are in the class next week, but I'm giving another one next week. All right. Which is going to be on website design. And I think I told you this before, that the hope is that next summer we're going to be in a good enough place where these academies will be offered actually in a classroom. So you'll either come to the Ranken classroom in St. Louis or the one in Wentzville. The way we've done it in the past is we teach the same class twice. We teach it for a week in St. Louis. Then we teach the same class for a week in Wentzville. And in the past, we've always had two instructors. Mr. Gudmested usually teaches it in St. Louis, and I walk around and help people who have problems. Then we go to Wentzville, and I teach it there, and Mr. Gudmested walks around. So if you did enjoy this, great. If you didn't, that's, then I'm sorry. But again, if you do want to send me a copy, a picture of yourself, that'd be great. All right. And if you don't, not a problem. If you want to share anything that you've worked on and send me a link to it, then I'll try to put that stuff all out on the website I'm going to create next week. All right. And finally, again, if you are going to, you either should have already gotten the evaluation form or you're going to be getting it shortly. If you would please fill that out and send it back to Ms. Bragg. So again, last thing, as I mentioned up in the chat here. All right. It says, again, I am attaching a different PDF. That's what we just went over. But this part right here that's in blue, hopefully you can see this. It says tomorrow morning, we will meet electronically like we've been meeting for only about 10 or 15 minutes at the most. All right. Then I'm going to give you the rest of the morning to work on this particular program. Then after lunch, I'm going to share with you what I've done. I'm hoping to get it done by then. All right. And I will make that link available. So you will get one email from me. You've been getting a lot of emails, one every day, but you'll be getting an email from me a little later today that's got the link to this tape that I'm making. The first tape that I made was the longest one I'd ever made. It was 4 hours and 5 minutes. Then the second day, it was even longer. It was 4 hours and almost 15 minutes. The one yesterday, because we ended a little early, was about 3 hours and 35 minutes. This one today will probably only be about a couple hours long. The one tomorrow will be very short. It'll probably be about an hour. Does anyone have any questions on what I'm asking you to do? All right. Then, like I said, if you want to give this a try, that'd be great. Call it whatever you want. All right. But I will give you a copy of mine tomorrow after lunch. All right. I hope to see all of you or talk to all of you tomorrow. If for some reason you've had enough and that's it, thank you for the experience. And hopefully you had a good time in the class. And if there are no other questions, that's it then for today. See you tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thank you. See you tomorrow.
Thanks.
See you tomorrow.
See you
Bye.
tomorrow. Thank you.
Thanks for doing this.
Oh, thank you. I had a good time. I hope you did too.
Have a good one.